Hello, my name is Daniel Pressman. I am making my opposition opening speech. I'm going to be making three main points. First, I'm going to run a procedural argument, then then state a couple disadvantages, and then run my counter plan, which is all in opposition of the proposition's argument that the United States federal government ought to pay reparations to African Americans. So first off, to go over the procedural argument, the proposition did not specify what type of reparations they are going to give. And given that I only have a couple minutes to argue my side as a whole in this debate, as it's a pretty short debate in the grand scheme of things, and by not specifying what type of reparations this plan is going to have, when it's going to be implemented, and really any specifications on the topic at all, it is unfair for me to have to debate against it, as there's so many topics and situations and variables that I would have to account for and argue against, that it's impossible for me to do it in a fair way. There's a clear disadvantage against me with this set in mind, and he really should lose based off solely this. In the event that you don't vote for the proposition to lose just based off this, I am going to make some other arguments as well. First off, let's keep in mind that African Americans actually suffered, the African Americans that actually suffered all the awful abuse from slavery lived a very long time ago and now are deceased. And by giving reparations to all African Americans, we aren't just helping out the direct descendants of past slaves, but tons of other immigrants who are black and have no connection to slavery in this country whatsoever, and therefore have done nothing to deserve these reparations. What this would result in is really just a waste of resources, no matter what it would be. Secondly, according to major market research, African Americans, if constituted as their own country, would have the 11th highest gross national product, otherwise known as GDP, of any country in the world, which is significantly higher than any country that slaves came from. In addition to this, and being a wealthy demographic group, which happens to be richer than 90% of the people in the world, blacks in America have a longer life expectancy than African and Caribbean blacks, as well as having higher rates of literacy and achieve more post-secondary degrees as a percentage of the population than blacks in Africa. So, keeping this in mind, although slavery was an awful institution as a whole, African Americans did ultimately benefit long-term from some aspects of slavery and some impacts of it long-term, in that it boosted the American economy as a whole and allowed, once slaves were free, to enter an economy that was booming. And this led to the progression of blacks as a whole in this country to the point where they do have the 11th highest GDP in the country, in the world, that is, and are a pretty prospering race in the grand scheme of things. With this being said, this is pretty much a perfect transition to my counter plan that would give reparations to a group of people that has higher poverty rates, lower high school and college graduation rates, is in the workforce less, and is in even less prominent jobs in the workforce, and is really suffering as a whole more than African Americans, which is Native Americans. And my counter plan would do it through three parts. Native Americans suffer from great poverty, so to address this issue, there would be $200,000 paid to all Native Americans. I know there are some concerns that have been brought up in the past through the media and other outlets that Native Americans would spend this money, if given reparations, not in beneficial ways, i.e. on alcohol, gambling, stuff like that. But the thing is, this group of people was wronged. Our country made them worse as a whole. And these people deserve this money and the right to do whatever they want with it. Secondly, Native Americans would receive small incremental amounts of land over time in areas to be determined and agreed upon by tribes and the federal government as mutually beneficial. We took land from Native Americans, as simple as that, and although it's not beneficial to anyone to give it all back, they do deserve some of that land back if it's agreed mutually beneficial. Lastly, pre-K and public universities will now be free for all Native Americans, along with a 35% increase in funding for public schools with a high percentage of Native Americans. The hope in this is that this increase in funding and opportunities in education would allow for higher graduation rates in high school and college, than more Native Americans in the workforce, in prominent jobs in the workforce, and then they're able to go back to the reservations and help make them a better place to live and grow up and prosper. It's obvious to me that before addressing or even thinking about giving reparations to African Americans, we have to address Native Americans and their issues, because they were wronged first. The wrongs we did to them are still clearly harming their race more than African Americans. And with that, I rest my case. Thank you.